All praises to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Peace and shalom to everyone joining us on this program, which is the Fountain of Israel's Bible Studies program. And as always, it's an honor for me to stand before you on the Lord's Sabbath day. Shabbat Shalom, Israel. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get into a lesson. Interesting enough, I just had a debate last night. Now, the debate was covering, or it was entitled, Understanding the Covenants of God. And that's what this lesson is all about. Now, the reason I wanted to do this is because, well, I have a ton of scripture to begin with. And second, when you get in a debate, there's a lot of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And sometimes you're not able to get your full point across. So I wanted to take this opportunity to actually get my full point across, because sometimes you can make a point or lay some scriptures out there and then your opponent can muddy the water. But I'm sure he probably felt the same way about me. He would lay out some scriptures, and then when I respond to what he said or rebuttal what he just said, in his opinion, I may be muddying the water. So now you're just going to hear my side of it. Obviously, this is not a debate. This is a lesson. But the point of the whole lesson is for you and I to have an understanding of how the covenants of God actually works. And we're going to kind of distinguish what the old covenant and the new covenant really is. Okay? So let's take a look at this real quick. Let's have some fun with this. And again, the title of it is Understanding the Covenants of God. Okay? Now, a covenant is an agreement between two parties. Okay? There are two basic types of covenants. Okay? There's conditional and there's unconditional. Okay? When it comes to covenants. A conditional or bilateral covenant is an agreement that is binding on both parties for its fulfillment. Both parties agree to fulfill certain conditions. If either party fails to meet their responsibilities, the covenant is broken and neither party has to fulfill the expectations of the covenant. An unconditional or unilateral or one-sided unilateral covenant is an agreement between two parties, but only one of the two parties has to do something. Nothing is required of the other party. Okay, so the first covenant I want to look at, that we're going to look at over in Genesis 9, join me in Genesis 9, is the Noahic covenant, okay? And that's found in Genesis. It's the promise that God made to Noah and his descendants after the flood, which destroyed the world. The Noahic covenant has several distinguishing features. First, it's an unconditional covenant. Second, it was made to Noah and all his descendants, as well as every living creature on earth in general. And third, it is sealed with a sign, which is the rainbow. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. Genesis 9, and if you will, brother, if you can go to verse 8, start at Genesis 9, verse 8. When you get there, let the Bible speak.
And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you.
Okay, this is an agreement. This is a contract. Okay, go ahead.
And with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you, neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of the flood, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth.
Okay, now, we got to understand real quickly before we continue, okay? He said, I will establish my covenant with you. And then he started to say what that covenant is. He says, neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of the flood, neither shall there be any more, be a flood to destroy the earth. So I'm not going to destroy the earth with a great flood anymore. I'm not going to do that. But there's nothing, he doesn't need Noah to fulfill any particular condition first. I'm not talking about, him building an ark. I'm just saying for him to say, okay, I'm not going to destroy the earth anymore by flood. That's only God's part of the deal. That's him. That's him. Noah didn't have to do anything for him to fulfill that particular covenant. Continue, brother.
And God said, This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living thing, every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations.
Ongoing, perpetual. Do we not see rainbows now today? We have rainbows now. So we're you know what we're witnessing when we see the rainbow? We're witnessing the token of the covenant that he made with Noah and his descendants. We see, when you see that, you say, oh, okay. One, that's the token of the covenant that he showed Noah. And two, it means when the earth ends, it will not be by a flood. Part of your faith is, okay, God said that, I believe that. Regardless of how much it rains, no matter how many Hurricane Katrinas and levee break-ins and all this other stuff, it doesn't matter. The world won't be destroyed by a flood, okay? So, and he says perpetual, and we still see it now. So that part's true. Go ahead. I do
set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth, and that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh.
Yep.
And the waters shall become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth.
What else?
And God said unto Noah, this is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all the flesh that is upon the earth.
Okay, so let's take a look now. Let's take a look at this. Now, the Noahic covenant is an unconditional covenant because it does not depend upon anything Noah or his descendant had to do for the fulfillment of that covenant. The promise is based upon God's faithfulness alone. Because of God's faithfulness to always do what he says he will do. We can know today with certainty that there will never be another worldwide flood as there was in the days of Noah. No matter how wicked mankind becomes, and we all know that mankind has become very, very wicked. Neither the wickedness nor the righteousness of mankind affects this unconditional covenant. There is no condition under which God will renege on his promise, just so that we know that. Now, after the flood, God promised that he would never again send a worldwide flood for his divine judgment. Okay, and then we know he set up the bow. Now, we're going to start looking at the Abrahamic covenant, the covenant of Abraham. All right. Now, the Abrahamic covenant is an unconditional covenant. God made promises to Abraham that required nothing of Abraham. He did. That's in Genesis 15, and describes a part of the Abrahamic covenant specifically dealing with the dimensions of the land God promised to Abraham and his descendants. The actual Abrahamic covenant is found in Genesis 12. The ceremony recorded in Genesis 15 indicates the unconditional nature of the covenant. The only time that both parties of the covenant would pass between the pieces of animals was when the fulfillment of the covenant was dependent upon both parties keeping commitments. Concerning the significance of God alone moving between the halves of moving between the halves of the animals, it is to be noted that it is a smoking furnace and a flaming torch representing God, not Abraham, which pass between the pieces. Okay, such an act, it would seem, should be shared by both parties, but in this case, God's solidary action is doubtless to be explained by the fact that the covenant is partially a promise from God. Okay, so now we know later God gave Abraham the right of circumcision, which we will look at that. So let's go to Genesis 13 and pick it up at verse 14. Genesis 13 and 14. Okay, and we're going to read 14 through 18. So let's start at Genesis 13. And when you get to verse 14, let the Bible speak.
And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever.
Okay.
And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered.
So we know this is not completely fulfilled just yet. We understand that because we know that ultimately Abraham really only had Ishmael and Isaac, right? That's not a lot of seed just yet. But when you keep going down the line, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, all that other stuff, all these other descendants, now you're talking about a lot of people scattered everywhere. And guess what? The other part of that promise is that the descendants of Abraham, they're not in the land yet. Hebrew or Israelite, we're just not there yet, okay? But he's still going to fulfill that covenant, okay? Where we stop?
17.
Go ahead.
Arise, walk through the land in the length of it, and in the breadth of it, for I will give unto thee.
Go ahead.
Then Abram removed his tent and came and dwelt in the plain Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord.
That's how faithful Abraham was, okay? So we stop at 18. Go to Genesis 15. Go to Genesis 15, okay? So we just saw like a land covenant. We're going to look at this a little bit more, looking at some of this land. So he's saying, look, north, south, east, and west, everything you see, I'm going to give that to you. You and your descendants. And you're going to have a whole lot of descendants, okay? Like the stars, the dust of the ground, the stars in heaven, you can't count. Okay, so 15, and start at verse 18.
In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river
Euphrates.
The Kenites and the Kenizzites and the
Canaanites,
and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaims and the Amorites and the Canaanites and
Girgashites.
Girgashites and the
Jebusites. Okay, so he's kind of getting into, that's okay, he's starting to kind of get into the land, but he was trying to be very specific. Okay, these people over there, all this land where they are. Okay, now we saw land. We're going to look at the lineage a little bit in Genesis 12. Go to Genesis 12 and then we'll go to 17 real quick. Okay, let's go Genesis 12 real quick, and we want to read those first 3 verses. Genesis 12, 1 through 3.
Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing.
Yes.
And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And I shall... And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed.
Okay, now, we can all agree Abraham has a lot of seed. This is part of the lineage or the seed covenant. We can agree that there's a lot of people that come out of Abraham. But Abraham didn't see all his seed. Abraham didn't see everyone, okay? I mean, you know, he has Ishmael, and then, of course, he had to send him away. He had Isaac. That's about it. Then he had, his grandson, Jacob. But that's about it. But the Lord promised that I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee. Okay, so he does fulfill his promise over time, and apparently through generations. Okay, so it is still good. Now, let's look at the token of the covenant in Genesis 17 before we move on. Token of the covenant in Genesis 17, and that's going to be 9 through 14. Genesis 17.
And God said unto Abram, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant, which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised.
So it sounds like everyone who calls himself Hebrews, because his seed and the seed after him, sounds like everyone should be doing it, okay? Everyone. He said, and every man child among you shall be circumcised. Go ahead.
And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant between me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations. He that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger which is not of thy seed. He that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with money, must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from my people. He hath broken my covenant.
Okay, because he had broken my covenant. Okay, so look at the points of the covenant that we just covered. Okay, the promise of the land. Okay, we have a land covenant. Look here, look there, look north, south, east, west. All this is going to be yours. We looked at the promise of descendants. Your seed is going to be, you can't, it's like the dust of the earth. You can't count the stars, things like that. It's going to be a whole lot of people. Okay, and for a long time, Abraham was childless until at least about 75 years old, until Ishmael came along. Okay, and then the blessing, the promise of, blessing and redemption and stuff if we kept going. Okay, so this particular promise is what Paul was talking about. This part, okay, of the promise. This is what he was talking about when he says that, anything that come after that won't make this part of none effect. So go to Galatians 3 for me real quick, and then we'll move back. Then we're going to move into the Sinai covenant or Mosaic covenant. So Galatians 3. Galatians 3. And when you get to Galatians, I would like to pick it up at 16. Galatians 3. Now, we just read all these promises of, Abraham. So let's take a look at this. Galatians 3:16. Go ahead.
Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made.
Mm-hmm.
He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And this I say, that the covenant that is confirmed before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after, cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of non-effect.
Correct.
For if the inheritance be of the law, it is no more of the promise. But God gave it to Abraham by promise.
Okay, now some people like to go there and be like, well, the law can't come and disannul this or take away the promises that's made to Abraham. But we just read what the promises of Abraham was. Land and descendants, redemption, all that kind of thing. We saw that, okay? So no one is saying, oh, well, now when you get to the Sinai covenant, that does away with Abraham's. Nope, that comes right along with it. Okay, because actually Abraham, if you think about it, Abraham has to realize that promise is being fulfilled, meaning he has to be over there in the land. Him and his descendants have to be over there in the land. It hasn't happened yet. Okay, so it's long, far reaching. It hasn't happened yet. Okay, so no, nothing after that is going to disannul that, because that is not completely fulfilled. But do we have faith that God's going to keep his word? Okay, so let's go to Exodus 19, and we're going to move towards the Sinai covenant, okay? We're going to go towards the Sinai covenant or the Mosaic covenant in Exodus 19. And we're going to read this a little bit, and we're going to get a little detail in this, okay? So we're going to start at verse 1 of Exodus, okay? In Shemot 19, verse 1. Shemot or Exodus 19, verse 1. When you get there, brother, let the Bible speak.
In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. For they were departed from Rephidim, and were come to the desert of Sinai, and had pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount. And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if you obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine.
Now, didn't we say earlier about conditional and unconditional, right? So let's look at this one more time right there in verse 5. It said, Now therefore, if you obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a particular treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. Okay? If implies there's a condition, right? Okay, go ahead.
And you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation.
Yep.
These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before their faces all these words, which the Lord commanded him.
Okay, and what did they say?
And all the people answered together and said, All that the Lord hath spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord.
They agreed to the covenant, didn't they? They agreed to the deal. He said, if you do this, I'll make you a peculiar treasure. If. They said, we'll do it. They agreed to it. Go ahead.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go unto the people, and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the 3rd day. For the 3rd day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourselves, that ye go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever touches the mount shall be surely put to death. There shall not be a hand touch it, but he surely be stoned or shot through, whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. When the the trumpet soundeth long, they shall come up to the mount. And Moses went down from the mount unto the people, and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, Be ready against the third day, come not at your wives. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding the cloud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on the smoke, because the Lord descended upon it fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly.
Yes.
And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by a voice.
Okay, so they heard this. God answered by voice. Go ahead.
And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai, and the top of the mount, and the Lord called upon Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish.
Okay, so don't let them come up here. They can't see me. They can't see this whatever, because they're going to die if they do, okay? Keep them back. Keep them at bay. Go ahead.
And let the priests also which come near to the Lord sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break forth upon them. And Moses said unto the Lord, The people cannot come unto Mount Sinai, for thou chargest us, saying, Set bounds about the mount, and sanctify it.
Yep.
And the Lord said unto them, Away, get thee down, and thou shalt come up, thou and Aaron with thee. But let not the priests and the people speak through to come up unto the Lord, lest he break forth upon them.
Okay, so he wanted them to just stay back. We're trying to get ready. I'm getting Moses ready. Sanctify yourselves. Wait for me. Okay, they're starting to see this. They saw the thunder, the lightning, and the fire on the mountain, on Mount Sinai. They saw all these things getting ready for this covenant. Okay, he already told them, I'm going to do these things. You guys want to do this? Yes, we'll do it. Okay, and if you obey my voice, now go over here to Deuteronomy 4. Let's go to Deuteronomy 4. Now, we're going to come back to Exodus in just a second, okay? But let's go to Deuteronomy 4. Deuteronomy 4. Deuteronomy 4 in verse 12.
And the Lord spake unto you out of the midst of the fire. Ye heard the voice of the words, but saw no similitude. Only ye heard a voice.
So they, Israel, they all heard a voice, right? So they heard God, okay? And what happened?
And he declared unto you his covenant.
His agreement. Go ahead.
Which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments.
Okay, so what is part of the covenant? The 10 commandments. Part of the covenant. Even the 10 commandments, okay? So let's do that again. And he declared unto you his covenant, his contract, his agreement, which he commanded you to perform. Even the 10 commandments. That's the covenant. Finish that, brother.
And he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone.
Just so we know. I just want everyone to understand clearly what the covenant was. Okay? Because what tends to happen, go to Exodus 24. Okay? Exodus 24, Shemot 24. What ends up happening is people kind of convolute the issue. They don't make it clear what it is. So I'm being very, very clear. We outlined what the Noahic covenant was. We outlined what the Abrahamic covenant was. And now we know what the Sinai covenant was. He made a deal with them. I'm going to give you all these law, statutes, and commandments. If you obey them, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to be a husband unto you. I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people. If you don't, right there tells you it's conditional. Now, we can be reconciled back. That's why we have the Messiah. That's how we're reconciled back. But the covenant, they did break, right? Okay, so Exodus 24 or Shemot 24, and pick it up at verse 7. Go ahead.
And he took the book of the covenant and read it, and read in the audience of the people. And they said, All that the Lord hath said we will do, and be obedient. Okay. And Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people, and said, Behold, the blood of the covenant, which the Lord hath made with you concerning all these words.
Oh, so look what he did. Now, we said that he read in the audience the book of the the covenant. We know even the 10 Commandments, and we saw what he did. And Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, "Behold, this is the book of the covenant." Okay, so he has the 10 Commandments. He got the blood of bulls and goats, the hyssop and all that. Sprinkled it on the people, ratifying it. Okay, the deal is sealed now. We're all under this covenant. We're all in agreement with this. We're all together. Okay? So now let's go on over to Hebrews, and we'll come back here a little bit later, but let's go to Hebrews 10. Okay? Let's go to Hebrews 10. Okay? Mashakim Yahudim 10. Hebrews 10, and start at verse 1, brother. Verse 1, let the Bible speak.
For the law having a shadow of good things to come,
Mm-hmm.
and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year by the continually make the comers thereunto perfect.
Mm-hmm.
For then would they not have ceased to be offered?
Mm-hmm.
Because that the worshippers once purged should have had no more conscience of sin.
Mm-hmm.
But in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again made of sins every year.
Mm-hmm.
For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sins.
Okay, now we are talking about the animal sacrifice here, but we're talking about how everything was ratified by the blood of bulls and goats. That's just how things were ratified. We saw Moses used, the blood, okay, or a bull or a goat or whatever, and then he ratified that agreement. And then, of course, later, the sacrificial system got set up through the Levitical priesthood, and they had to keep offering sacrifices to purge sin. But they had to keep on doing it over and over because they kept messing up, okay? Now, we know it was the law written on stone, ratified by the blood or a bull and goat when Moses sprinkled it on the people. Okay? Now, if we look at it in Matthew or Matityahu and verse 26, Matthew 26, now we're going to look at a different type of blood. Okay? Matthew 26, read 27 and 28. Matthew 26.
And he took the cup and gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying,
What did he say?
Drink ye all of it.
Mm-hmm.
For this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins.
Okay, so he memorialized, he made it symbolic. He said, okay, take this cup of wine. Okay, this is when he was doing the Passover. But he said, take this, for this is my blood of the New Testament, New Covenant. Let's look at a little definition here. I took the liberty of going to Strong's 1242. Strong's 1242 says this, okay, in the Greek. Diatheke, okay? Covenant. In the Greek is diatheke. It means properly a disposition, i.e. especially a contract, especially a divisory will, covenant or testament. Okay? Covenant or interchangeably. Covenant or testament. Okay? So the new covenant is his blood right here. And we're going to go a little bit deeper. But remember, the old covenant, law, stone, blood. Now, we're going to go a little bit deeper. We go to Hebrews 9. Hebrews 9. Okay, when you get there, brother, let's go to chapter 9 and verse 19. Chapter 9, verse 19. Yahudim. Mashakim Yahudim 9:19. Go ahead.
For when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and of goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book and all the people.
Both the book and the people. Go ahead.
Saying, this is the blood of the testament which God hath enjoined unto you.
Okay, now, remember when we looked at the definition, I said you can interchange covenant and testament. Look what he just said. earlier he said, okay, this is the blood of the covenant. This is the book of the covenant, things like that. And then it says right here in Hebrews, he said, saying this is the book of the testament. Okay, you can change the word. You can interchange the word. Okay, now let's go a little bit deeper. Okay, now we know that Christ said, go to Jeremiah 31. Jeremiah 31. Okay, let's go there. So we know Christ said, okay, take this, drink it. This is my blood of the New Testament, stuff like that. So that was symbolic because the very next day he was actually crucified, and they really did draw blood when he was crucified. Okay, so let's look at it. Jeremiah 31. Pick it up at verse 31. 31. Go ahead, brother.
Behold, the days come, said the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was an husband unto them, said the Lord.
Okay, now, which my covenant or testament that they break, I was a husband unto them. Okay, so they went off on their own. They started breaking the agreement, the contracts laid out. Thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, and thou shalt. But they broke it. Okay? So, let's continue. Go ahead.
But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel.
What's it going to do?
After those days, said the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts, and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people.
Now, did he just define what the new covenant is? That verse right there, he just defined exactly what the new covenant, and he explains it. Now, let me just calm down because I tend to get a little excited. Okay? Let me put it like this. Do you actually need someone to explain that verse to you? Not really. Let's just read it one more time and then we're going to go through. Okay? Not according to the, but 33. Read 33.
But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, said the Lord.
Now, what is he going to do? Go ahead.
I will put my law in their inward parts, and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people.
Go ahead. So we got the definition of the new covenant. Go ahead.
And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, said the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more.
No, now let's go ahead and look at another definition. Okay, covenant we did the covenant in the Greek. Now we can do it in the Hebrew, which is Strong's 1285. Okay, berith. Okay, berith. Strong's 1285, also 1262. Okay, in the sense of cutting. Okay, 1254. But it says a compact, because made by passing between pieces of flesh, just kind of like what happened with Abraham, okay, when God passed between the two of those, okay, confederacy, okay, or covenant or league agreement, right? We're making an agreement. That's what it is. So Old Testament, New Testament, still we're making an agreement. He even took the liberty to let us know what the New Testament would contain, what it would look like. I'll tell you what it looked like. It's going to be a new covenant. Not according to the one I made with the fathers, okay, over in the Sinai. I'm going to make a new one. Let me tell you exactly what that is. I'm going to take my laws. This is Old Testament, so he can't be talking about any other set of laws, right? This is Old Testament, Jeremiah. I'm going to take my laws. I'm going to put it in your heart and in your mind. And here he said inward parts, okay, and in your heart, okay? So where were the original covenants taken? On stones. But he said, now I'm going to put it in your heart so you don't just look at those type things. I want it inside you so you want to keep the covenant. I don't want you to keep looking at the contract and vexing yourself like, man, do I really got to do that? I don't want to do this, and trying to check for fine print. I want you to just inwardly want to uphold the contract. Okay? Then the other thing that he's going to do, he's taking off stone. He takes the same laws, take it off stone, put it in your heart and mind, and then he's going to ratify with a different kind of blood, a more worthy ratification. Okay? Hebrews 8 says the same thing. Okay? Hebrews 8 says the same thing, but you know what? I'll read that. I'm going to meet you guys over in Daniel real quick. We're gonna go to Daniel. Let's go over to Daniel. Okay, we know in Hebrews 8, we have the same thing, which says, finding fault with them. Hebrews 8:8, it says, finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days come, said the Lord, that I'll make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Okay, now we know it's the same covenant. Okay, and then he says, in verse 10, for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, said the Lord, I will put my laws in their mind and write them in their heart, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be my people. Daniel verse 9, or chapter 9, verse 27. Okay, Daniel 9 verse 27. And when you get there, brother, go ahead and read. I want to see something real quick. Let's see what he's going to do.
And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice of the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate.
Let's break that down as you guys go to Matthew 5. Let's break that down. Daniel 9 and 27, he said, and he shall confirm the covenant for a week. Now, we're still in Daniel, so we're still talking about the same covenant, aren't we? Still in Daniel, so it couldn't have changed yet. Still talking about the same covenant, and in fact, he's going to confirm that covenant, that book of the law that Israel agreed to. He's going to confirm the covenant for 1 week, and in the midst of the week, he shall cause so he's going to be cut off. Okay, he's going to be cut off, and he's going to cause the sacrifices and oblations to cease. We made sacrifices year by year, but in the New Testament, we start seeing those sacrifices start to go away as we go along. They stop making these sacrifices. So he's going to cause the sacrifices and oblations to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations shall make desolate. Okay, what happened in 70 A.D.? Roman came in, sacked Jerusalem, and just overspreaded a bunch of abomination. Period. Okay? Even until the consummation, even until he comes back the second time. Okay? And it's going to be desolate. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Okay? Even till he comes back. All that's going to happen. Now, he said, now, we want to take the first thing, go to Matthew 5 and 17. He said, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Okay? Matthew 5, pick it up in 17, brother.
Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill.
Does it sound like he's confirming it? We know what it is now, and it sounds like he's confirming it. First thing he wanted to say, think not that I have come to destroy the law. Continue, brother.
For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled.
Now let's just use common sense, okay? How long is this same law going to be good? Until heaven and earth pass. If we are still here on heaven and earth, it is still good. Continue.
Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven.
Okay, and then he raised the standard. Go ahead. What did he say in 20?
For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter the kingdom of heaven.
So he raised the anthill. He raised it up a little bit, okay? That your righteousness have to exceed that. Well, what do you mean by that, Robert? What did he call the Pharisees a lot of times? Hypocrites. Say one thing, do something else. So your righteousness have to be better than hypocrites, right? He called them hypocrites a bunch of times, right? Hypocrites. He said your righteousness needs to exceed that. You got to get better than that, okay? So he raised it up a little bit. Now, many times when someone wants to get away from the covenant. Now, what we're teaching is get back into covenant with God. Get back into agreement with God. Try your best to fulfill your part of the agreement. That's what we're trying to teach. But oftentimes when people want to undo that, they want to take you to weird writings. Okay? And I say that loosely because I don't think Paul's writings are weird. I think they're just a little hard to be understood. And you have to understand something. His writings is not the foundation by which you define all the other scriptures. No, you got to go everywhere else before you get to Paul's writings. You should read everything else. You should actually read Paul's writing last because you need a foundation. Okay? The problem that my opponent has last night was that he kept defining everything on Paul's writings first. And I had to ask him a simple question. What did the apostles teach from? What did they read? And now he had to concede and say, well, they taught, the Old Testament. I said, exactly. Okay, so the thing is, every time I say something somewhere that's not in Paul, and by the way, I don't have a problem with Paul's writings, but every time I say something that's not in Paul, he had to go run to Paul to try to justify something. That's why we're going to go right here to Acts 21. Acts 21, and let's pick it up at verse 18. Verse 18. Acts 21 and 18.
And the day following Paul went in with us unto James, and all the elders were present.
Yep.
And when he had saluted them, he declared particularly what things God had wrought among the Gentiles by his ministry. And when they heard it, they glorified the Lord, and said unto him, Thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law. And they are informed of thee, that thou teachest all the Jews which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after their customs.
Okay, so he said this is what everyone heard. That's basically what he's saying. This is what everyone heard. And they are informed of thee that thou teachest all the Jews which are among the Gentiles, going over there telling them, hey, don't forsake Moses, okay? And saying that they ought not circumcise their children, neither to walk after the customs, okay? So don't do Tanakh. Don't do Moses, okay? Don't follow Torah, basically. Okay, in 22?
What is it, therefore? The multitude must needs come together, for they will hear that thou art come.
All right.
Do therefore this that we say to thee. We have 4 men which have a vow on them. Them take and purify themselves with them, and be at charges with them, that they may shave their heads, and all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee. And nothing but that thou thyself also walkest orderly, and keepest the law.
And keepest the what?
The law.
Okay, so he said, look at this. He said, man, we're hearing stuff about you. We're hearing that you're teaching people to forsake Moses, to don't do that kind of stuff. But he said, we got 4 guys. We have 4 men which have a vow on them, Nazirite vow. Okay, again, that's Old Testament. Take them and purify thyself with them, and be at charges with them, that they may shave their heads, and all may know that those things, that stuff about forsake Moses and, don't circumcise your kids and stuff, wherefore they were informed concerning thee are nothing, but that thou thyself also walkest orderly and keepest the law. Okay, this is going to prove that you are doing. Okay, let's see if he did it in verse 26. Go to 26.
Then Paul took the men, and the next day purified themselves with them, entered into the temple, to signify the accomplishment of the days of purification.
Okay.
Unto that an offering shall be offered for every one of them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, let's go to Acts 24. See, here's the thing. He did take the vow. Why? To prove that he was not teaching against Moses. Okay? So either you believe that, or he lied. Okay? Or he lied. Acts 24. Okay? Or he lied. Then Paul took the men, and the next day purifying himself with them, entered into the temple to signify the accomplishment of the days of the purification. So he did this to prove. The only reason to prove, no, I'm not teaching against Moses. So that's the foundation. We got to remember, okay, that is the foundation. That's got to be your anchor. Okay, this is half your anchor. I'm going to give you the other half of your anchor so that you can get better understanding of what Paul says later. Okay, this is your anchor. Before he started his ministry, this is in Acts, okay? Before he started writing letters, before he penned one letter, okay? So Acts 24, and pick it up in 10, at verse 10, Acts 24 and 10.
Then Paul, after After that the governor had beckoned unto him to speak, answered, For as much as I know that thou hast been of many years a judge unto this nation, I do the more cheerfully answer for myself, because that thou mayest understand that there are yet but 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem for to worship.
He's still going to Jerusalem for to worship. Go ahead.
And they neither found me in the temple disputing with any man, neither raising up the people, neither in the synagogues nor in the city.
I did nothing wrong. Go ahead.
Neither can they prove the things whereof they accuse now of me.
Paul said they can't prove any of that stuff that they accuse me of. But this is what I'm going to confess to you. Go ahead, brother.
But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the God, of the fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets.
He believed all things written in the law of the prophets. He didn't say, I believe in all things, the letters I'm going to write in the future. I believe in all things written in the law and the prophets, right? He don't have his own doctrine. Now, he has a different way of explaining certain things that may go over some people's head. But he's not teaching against Moses. He may expound on it. He may explain it a little bit or whatever. But that's it. Look, when he goes to the Gentiles, you got to understand it's a people who don't have the law. They don't have that foundation. Okay? They don't have the foundation, so he has to come with a different approach. That's it. If he talks to a Jew or something like that, he can go boom right to brass tacks. But when he talks to a Gentile that don't know the God of Israel, don't know his law, have no idea what the covenant is, he has to use a different approach. Same thing with when you have Timothy, who gets circumcised. Why? Because his mother was a Jew. So he like, look, you already know. Hey, let's go ahead and get this done. Titus, he waited, being a Greek. All right, so let's go ahead. He said he reached the law and the prophets. Let's go ahead and read the next two verses real quick, and then we'll move on. Go ahead.
And have hope toward God, which they themselves also allow, that there shall be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and the unjust. And herein I do exercise myself to have always a conscience void of offense toward God and toward men. Okay, now, one of the things that they misconstrue or have a bad idea of Israelites, as we as Israelites, one of the things is they say things, or they try to make the argument, the law can't save you. That's what they do. The commandments can't save you. The law can't save you. You can't get salvation from that. Here's the problem with that. The problem is that none of us, well, I never said that keep the law, get salvation. Because I know that we all broke the law. But Robert, you said that we have to keep the law. Yeah, we do. But I didn't say you have to keep the law to get salvation. You have to get the law to be justified. You cannot justify yourself in the law without Christ, without Mashiach, without a Messiah. You won't be justified. In fact, he's the justifier when you go to when you go to Romans 3. He's the justifier. So when they go there, people get confused and they're like, oh, see, by the deeds of the law shall no flesh be justified. No, when you're justified, when you're standing before the Lord and you are standing next to your record of sin and see if you pass the test, you fail. But when you have your advocate, the Messiah, who said, no, I'll cover his sins. I'll cover him. I got that. He's one of mine. Now you're justified. He's the justifier, not you or I. So you say, well, if that doesn't give us salvation, then why should we keep the law? Glad you asked. Let's see why should we keep the law? Because there's a couple of reasons. Why should we keep the law? Go to John 14. Go to John 14. Okay, and when you get to John 14, brother, I'm going to pick it up at verse 15. Yochanan 14, verse 15, go ahead. If you love me, keep my commandments.
Reason number one to keep the commandments, because you love him. You love God, right? You love Christ, right? You love Messiah, right? You do that. Skip to verse 21.
He that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. And he that loveth me shall be loved by my Father, and I will love him, and will manifest myself to him.
Ask your question. Do you want that? You want to love him, you want him to love you, and you want the love of the Father, right? So keep the commandments because you love him. Okay, let's go to John. Go to John 15, Yochanan 15. So one, you keep it because you love him. Yochanan 15, verse 10. Go to verse 10. John 15 and 10. Go ahead.
If ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love.
And abide in his love. Okay. So you want to love him. You want to stay in his love, and his love abide in you. Keep the commandments. Want another reason to keep the commandments? Okay. Go to 1 John 2. Go to 1 John 2, brother. 1 John 2. I'm giving you your reason. So when someone says, okay, well then why do we keep the commandments if it doesn't give us salvation? I'm giving you reasons right now. You want to love him. You want to abide in his love, and his love abide in you. Keep the commandments. Okay. 1 John 2. Okay. 1 Yochanan 2. Start at verse 3.
And hereby we do know that we know him, if we keep his commandments.
What else?
He that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him.
How many people are saying that today? You don't got to keep the commandments. Oh, I love Jesus, but you don't got to keep the commandments. You don't got to obey him. If you love me, keep my commandments, but you don't got to do that. Well, I love him, but I love him a different way. Or they just say the commandments change. He come to confirm the covenant, not to change it. He come to confirm it. First thing he said out the gate when the ministry started, he was like, think not that I've come to destroy the law. But when you get here, oh, Jesus, he had a different set of commandments. He has the law of love. He has the law of Jesus Christ. There's the law of faith. It's nothing changed, brother. There's nothing. It didn't change. He didn't lower his standards just because Israel wanted to go and break his commandments. The standard is the same, but he had to fix it. He said, you know what? This whole tablet of stone thing's in working. You need to get this on the inside. Oh, and this animal blood thing, that's temporary. This is my blood, the blood of the New Testament. You understand? So we got you. If you want to love him, keep his commandments. As you want to obey him, you want his love to abide in you, and you in him, keep his commandments. If you keep his commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as my Father's commandments, I abide in his love. And then hereby we know that we know him if we keep his commandments. You want to love him, abide in him. You want to know him, keep his commandments. We're still not done. Go to 1 John 3 and 24. Yochanan 3:24, 1 John.
And he that keepeth his commandments dwelleth in him, and he in him.
What else?
And hereby we know that we abide, that he abide in us by the Spirit which he had given us.
Keep his commandments. You know you have the Spirit in you. You keep his commandment. You know the Spirit abides in you. Okay, he that keep his commandment dwelleth in him. Okay, so you want to dwell with him, know him, love him, abide in all that. All that. You need another reason. Go to one more reason real quick. 1 John 5. Go to 1 John 5. Okay? 1 John 5. I don't want to read one from over there. 1 John 5. Yochanan Aleph 5:2. 1 John 5, read verse 2.
By this we know that we love the children of God, which we love when we love God, and keep his commandments.
Now you know you are loving your brother. You know how they like to say, oh, well, you know, it's just love thy neighbor as thyself and stuff. Okay, well, if you love your neighbor, you love God, you keep his commandment, that's how you know. John is saying this is how you're identified. That is the evidence of your faith. Oh, brother, see, it's about faith. Yes, it is, but it always has been about faith. Remember, not being mixed with faith, they perished. Okay, it's always been about faith. By this, we know that we love the children of God when we love God and keep his commandments. When we love God and keep his commandment, we love his children. You got to love one another's brothers and sisters, trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to get into the kingdom, right? We're all trying to get into the kingdom. All right. So that's what we're talking about. So the reason we keep it is not for the reason they say. They keep thinking that, oh, well, you're trying to keep that law. You know, you can't do it. You know, you can't keep it all. Okay, I'm not keeping it for the reason you think I'm keeping it. Right. That's all you got to do, brothers and sisters. That's all you got to do. I am keeping it. I do think we should keep it. Oh, well, nobody can keep it perfect. I'm not keeping it for the reason you think I'm keeping it. Okay. I'm not using it for a get out of hell free card. That's not why I'm doing it. I already know I messed them up. But I do want to get in line with the covenant. I do know I want to get in there. And then I know grace comes in and helps me out when I stumble and fall. Then I know that I'm not sufficient, but I know the Messiah's blood is sufficient to atone for my sins. And I have faith in that. I believe in that. That's what we have to understand. Okay, and we're going to get into that in a minute, but this has just been part 1 of understanding the covenants of God. Join us for part 2, and until next time, search the scriptures, improve all things. Shalom.